people to come and invest in Nigeria and to support small businesses. You are giving us huge tax of collecting revenue to support the budget funding requirement of the 3 tiers of government. Be that as it may, portioned to the amendment to Section 25, subsection 4 of the FRS Establishment Act, which empowers FRS to deploy technology to taxpayers. The service is now able to expand the scope and capacity of its ICT infrastructure to achieve 100% automation of all the tax administration processes. Secondly, to block revenue leakages and to improve revenue mobilization in this country. The process will ensure that all parties in a commercial transaction are adequately followed up to pay their fair share of taxes, thereby expanding the tax net. The service also having set up a full-fledged department for intelligence, strategic data mining and analysis in 2021, will also focus on compliance and enforcement strategies in 2022 by leveraging on intelligence, strategic data mining and analysis to enhance audit and our investigative functions. In addition, the service will, through its newly constituted tax incentive department, headed by a director, seek to reduce the tax abuse in incentive management in Nigeria. With a final clearance obtained also in 2021 for Nigeria to do an automatic reciprocal exchange of financial account information under the OECD Common Reporting Standard, FRS will also make effective use of information received, which we're already doing, on our residents from foreign tax authorities for effective tax administration. Lastly, on that first question, the service will support the compliance and enforcement strategies in 2022 with effective implementation of the penalty regimes in accordance with the laws and ensure prosecution of recustant taxpayers in order to serve as deterrent to other people that will not want to comply. And to come back to the issue raised by the Honorable Minister on the possibility of probably introducing new taxes. Let me start by saying that FRS is poised to promote or to support Dr. Jumoke in ensuring ease of doing business in Nigeria, because the success of our mandate invariably rely on the prosperity of our taxpayers. We will continue therefore ensure that we promote ease of tax administration in order to engender voluntary tax compliance by taxpayers. I want to remind us that the tax system is made up of three tripods. One is tax policy, the second one is tax legislation, and the last one, which affects me and the Internal Revenue Chairman of Kwara State, is tax administration. The service does not have direct responsibility for policy and legislation. However, the service is of the view that the implementation of the existing taxes should be deepened in terms of expanding the tax net and tax base, as well as eliminating abuses and abuse and leakages. We'll continue to provide advice to the relevant authorities responsible for policies and legislations, particularly the National Assembly, in this regard, to ensure that taxes are streamlined in such a manner that will not uh, uh, inhibit the growth and prosperity of businesses and affect what my sister does in the ease of doing business that she's championing for this country.
Thank you, Mr. Nami. Mrs. Somoni, you know that taxpayer identification is a major challenge for most state inland revenue services across the country. Apart from that, what other challenges are faced by states, their revenue drive efforts, and what recommendations are being proposed to deal with this? What kind of conversations do you have with your colleagues really to look for solutions for these challenges?
Thank you very much. The challenges are plenty, I can tell you. Digitization is quite key, like you have rightly said. Aside that, some of the other challenges we have is having the expected cooperation from the MDAs in each of the states, in being able to work with them to get the necessary information we need in blocking leakages one and being able to make all the collections that we need. Now, some states have gone quite far in the area of working with these MDAs. In Kwara State, for example, we have an interministerial committee that will sit to discuss the events of tax collection, revenue collection, and where the leakages are and what we can do to take care of them. One other major challenge that SRSs have is that most of them are not autonomous. We have situations where they are not empowered to do the job that they're supposed to do. And this is a major challenge for some of the states. In Kwara State, we have autonomy, and it helps a lot in being able to allow people listen to us and believe that, yes, we have been given that authority. So you have some states where the agencies are not the only ones. They're not the sole agency responsible for generating revenue in their state. So it's a major challenge. The issue of political will is also there. You find sometimes pronouncements are made by government, which in a way disturbs or affects the collection of revenue by the authority responsible for collecting the revenue. I think one other challenge we have is being able to link what we do with agencies that have the information that we require, regulatory agencies, BVN, NIN, being able to have the synergy such that you can just get the information you need directly from these people. So it needs to be a bit more open such that we can cross-fertilize and get information from all the entities that already have that information. We always say training and retraining. So basically the level of capacity, competent tax personnel across the SRSs is also a challenge that we have. And of course, the major one we have across the country, which is the issue of corruption and bureaucratic bottleneck, especially when you want to get things done. Those are some of the challenges that we have. So for me, I think, like I said, in Kwara State, we have been given that empowerment. So but it is something that is required in all the states to be able to assert themselves, be empowered to be able to do their job. Digitization and the, automation of all processes is very, very essential. It blocks leakages. So definitely we need to be able to have the same language spoken across revenue administration. And it helps us to get a lot of things done. You find out that talking about the political will, there are sometimes benefits of waivers that would definitely affect revenue generation in a state that you get and you really don't have control over it. It also forms part of the issues of the political will that is required. We expect that sharing of data between ourselves and all agencies that have data is very, very key. And we believe that if we're able to do that, it makes the job easier and it gives all the information that is required in going after taxpayers. Training and retraining is very, very key. The CITN has done quite a lot. I think recently what they have done now is insist on a particular, the MTTP training that is being done by all CITN members is now mandatory for you to have that every year. So it's a good development and it's going to help to get people in the tax administration sector to focus more on how to do their job, and it enforces that to a reasonable extent. And you can't take it away from being responsible or giving that sole mandate to collect revenue in your state. In the situation where you have challenges with other colleagues of the state doing the same thing, it's quite major and it affects the job that is being done by IRSs across the country. So those are some of the challenges that we have identified and that we have discussed at the Joint Tax Board, of which my chairman is also here, in helping the SRSs to be able to do more as far as their target is concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Somoni. Quite a lot you said. You're also in tandem with Mr. Nami in terms of at least the administration, you both are in charge. But you also said something which is very fundamental, which revolves around the politics of reforms. And I think the DG Budget Office mentioned that earlier in their session around infrastructure, because you should have at least that political support. The government will not say, go and look for money. And at the end of the day, they say, one way or the other, go and look for money. So there has to be that nexus. But Yomi, let me come back to you with the Finance Act. I think consecutive ones would say, let's take a critical look at 2019 and 2020 that has been implemented. How do you think that it has impacted the growth of IGR? And do you think that implementation of the previous Finance Act by the government has led to improved internal revenue, not just even for the federal government, but also for our states? That Mr. Nami can also weigh in later because.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Nancy. Maybe the first thing to note before answering that question categorically is that the impact of the changes are meant to be long-lasting, right? So these changes will continue to have continued relevance. So the laws are not just made for a particular year and then it elapses or expires after that year. So until the law is changed, it remains in force and we will continue to reap the benefit. But answering that question more specifically, I would say with an absolute yes. The changes have had effects. You just mentioned now and concurred to by Mr. Nami that in 2021, the FRS raked in over 6.4 trillion. That is the highest section so far in the history of the service. In 2020, in the heat of the pandemic, the collection was around 5 trillion. When everybody was maybe slightly below the original budget target. Target was brought down when the pandemic came in. But if you look at the analysis and the components, VAT, for example, in 2020 was the highest tax line, did a little above petroleum profit tax. I think it was about 5.31 trillion for VAT versus maybe 1.51 or thereabout for PIT. So why were we able to get VAT that is higher than PIT? Because that was a year that we increased the VAT rate from 5 to 7.5. If you break down the 6.4 trillion that was collected last year, you will notice that VAT, customs and excise, some of those indirect taxes item, electronic fund transfer levies, some of the multinational digital player that we're beginning to get, little by little. Some of the improvement that comes on the back of deployment of ICT, like tax promas that the chairman mentioned, increased enforcement and all of that because of the visibility that tax authorities now have to taxpayer data, when they can go to bank and get certain information. So cumulatively, when you put all of that together, what you will conclude with is that we are seeing improved changes. All right. So the impact might have been much slower than it would have been if the economy was not under the impact of COVID. But within the operating constraints, because and I said that because businesses are still struggling, particularly some sectors, right? So are still struggling under the impact. So if the economy was buoyant and everything was running as it was prior to the pandemic, you probably would even have seen a higher level of impact. So it's helping us to move along the direction that we want to travel. There will be need to do a lot more and run a lot more faster. And I think we'll be able to do that with some of the measures that Mr. Nami said. Let's bring in technology. FRS now have the legal backing to deploy proprietary technology to use third-party applications. There's a lot of power now in the hand of FRS to get taxpayer data from banks with increased penalties, for non-compliance. So that's increased transparency, increased openness, and just capacity of the FRS to be able to run as an independent and the sole tax collecting agent for the government. I think all of that will help because they're already helping.
Thank you, Yomi. Dr. Jumoke, let's take it also from where Yomi stopped in terms of even technology, what we've seen since COVID, the future, the ethics of work have changed. Take a look at, we're doing this online from different places, across the world, depends on where you are. So the importance of technology was emphasized even by COVID-19 pandemic, which we're still battling. And with Nigeria being projected to be the third most populous country in the world by 2040, it's been said that we're not making optimal use of our human capital potential to develop our digital economy. Having said that, we shouldn't also forget the fact that we're seeing digital companies in Nigeria come up to unicorn status, about $1.5 billion. So I guess that Mr. Nami will be looking at that side too. How do I ask these people making billions of dollars? But the question really is, to realize the immense potential offered by this digital economy, there must also be structures to enable businesses that government needs to put in place to capitalize on this population size. Young people also coming up with different startups, digital tools in improving our digital economy. So, Dr. Duwole, please, can you just comment on that?
Thank you, Nancy. So one of the pillars of PEBEC reforms is automation and digitization. We've placed a huge emphasis on that over the last 5 years. CAC from 6 manual forms to incorporate a company to 1 form, which is online. FIRS, another one of our very strong partners in reforming with the use of technology. The EC is here. They've worked on for filing online emails. It's been, as Yomi has said, it's been work in progress and continuing to, because we're both members of the Ministry of Finance committee that works on the finance bill. So year in, year out, continue to put in more and more reforms to make all these demands and all these directions actuality. We've also continued to for the import-export process. These are big ticket items that the digitization and automation of these processes will really have an impact on the economy. We, through NEC, the Ministry of Digital Economy and Communication, has also, of course, been working with state governments across the country on broadband penetration. We know that this is a game changer. Right of way has been reduced significantly across the country. It's an ongoing effort, Nancy. There's no other way. We wouldn't be able to have this virtual interface if we didn't have broadband connectivity that was stable. We can't afford to have any part of the country ostracized in times like this. There are businesses that work solely. There's Outsource Global, a company that works out of Abuja and Kaduna that actually gives outsourcing services to global clients. So, and that creates a lot of jobs for Nigerians. We're an English-speaking population. So really, you've talked about our tech sector and all the interesting things going on there. Out of the FDI that came to the continent for technology, about 30% came to Nigerian tech businesses. So it's really an area that we have a competitive advantage in our services sector. So we really can't afford, and of course, with the EO1, you know that the government itself is prioritizing transparency and efficiency, and that one of the main tools, particularly for efficiency and also for transparency, is digitizing and automating processes. So the head of the civil service has also been working very actively on making sure there's a transition plan for government to be able to work virtually. I think COVID also jump-started and accelerated a lot of these plans. And there's no other way. Right across the country, from federal, state governments, everybody knows that it's imperative that we're all able to function this way globally, or the country will be left behind.
Dr. Duwale. Mr. Nami, and I will say this is the last round of questions, really. And let's talk about the multiple and prolonged tax audits, the multiple collection agencies, just like mentioned earlier, and the different types of taxes. These are some of the challenges that Nigerians have been complaining about. Would you want to speak about how measures are being used to address these challenges?
Okay, thank you very much, Nancy. It is important to know that FRS in the year 2021 deployed a tax audit tool we call electronic tax audit process solution. This tool enables the tax audit department to monitor the entire audit process from start to finish. As much as most audit aides are dependent on the cooperation of taxpayers, the service has a 60-day target for auditors to conclude an audit process. Also, by leveraging on intelligence, strategic data mining, and analysis that I mentioned earlier, and it will, we're confident that the data and mining and analysis will enhance our audit and investigation functions in terms of quality and time of completion. On the multiplicity of collection agencies, this is a very sensitive matter, but this has also been, as it has been a case of concern to all of us at FRS. However, we hope that should be in the past now, with the amendment of to Section 68 of the FRS Establishment Act by the Finance Act 2021. By that amendment, it is now an offense for any other person or agency or federal government other than the FRS to carry out or authorize another person to carry out the function of administering, assessment, collection, accounting, or enforcement of taxes and levies due to the Federation and the federal government. The recent amendment to the FRS also has assisted enormously. So we want to advise Nigerians that should anybody pretend to be part of FRS or part of what we do, or wanting to do our carry our function, that person's attempt should be, or that attempt should be resisted by Nigerians, because there are sanctions that will go with it, and it should be reported to FRS because there are sanctions that will go with it going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Madam Momoni, I would like to have your views around fiscal federalism. You know, we can't do this without talking about that, and how Nigeria could better empower states to lead desired economic development. At the tail end of last year, Lagos states, Rivers states, and all of that. So, what's your view about fiscal federalism? Mr. Nami is laughing.
Just like Mr. Nami has said, it's a very, very sensitive matter, which, well, it's also very important because we would not want a situation where states will continue to go cap in hand to the government in the center for survival. The issue, like you said, of the VAT is still very much around. But basically, I think at the JTB, we had this discussion also, and we were hoping that the state's IRSs would have major representation in the formulating of most of these new laws that are coming to place, so that you can hear from our side and then know some of the challenges that we also face. So it's something that needs to be considered seriously. We have several positions we've come together to discuss, and we have made representation to the committee, but most times we see most of these things favor one end than the other. A good example is the issues of the VAT, and we also have issues on the natural resources. States have clamored for it to a reasonable extent, but while I would not want to go into the politics of the matter, it's quite sensitive, but basically there needs to be a lot done more for the states to be able to have the responsibility of what belongs to the state in a way where it benefits the state at the same time benefit the federal. There are some resources that, of course, there's conversation over where it belongs to, whether it is for the state or for the national level. But I think at a point we need to be able to come to a balance on how we should move this. There was a time the list of our VAT generated from states as against what is being remitted based on VAT was published, and it was an eye-opener. But a lot of assumptions made by people, especially about VAT coming from the north and things like that, it was definitely not the way it was expected. So we need to be part of the conversation so that we can arrive at something that works for everybody. I would not want to go into the debate of VAT right now. It is something that is quite sensitive. But for natural resources, for VAT, for withholding taxes, for stamp duty, these are positions that the states have positions about, but they have not exactly been put into consideration. And that is why you still find a lot of states cap in hand. If the fact does not come, it becomes a challenge for the state to be able to survive. So, well, that also gives the states the challenge of looking inwards and trying to generate revenues internally without having to rely on the federal government. So that is what I'll be able to say on this matter at this time. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Madam Omoni. I think we've got to round this up in about 2 minutes, and I'll crave your indulgence that we'll take the closing remarks now in 30 seconds. Yomi, I will start with your closing remark on the subject matter.
I think for me, it's to say and particularly for all of our people online, is to say the regulatory environment has changed significantly over the last couple of years, and particularly with the recent introduction of Finance Act. So a lot is changing. The penalty regime for infractions and non-compliance is getting a lot stiffer. A major revenue line for FRS now, if any company comes under their radar, will be penalties and fines, because this has been increased significantly. So businesses will need to, do impact assessment of how some of these regulatory changes are affecting them and impacting their operation, and make sure that the compliance framework in their respective businesses is strengthened, so that they can avoid penalty, the reputational damages that is associated with all of this. but also in the same breath, also take advantage of opportunities that may exist, because changes always introduce, both debit and credit side of compliance. So there is incentive for that businesses can leverage. There are penalties and, to avoid for infringements and all of that. So I would say businesses should do that, be a lot more strategic and proactive. Tax compliance can no longer be left to, just paper filing or just one person looking at your affairs. The largest number on your income statement might as well just be your tax expense line. So it's something that is critical, that is requiring a lot more strategic approach than we have seen. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you, Yomi. Dr. Duwale, yours in 30 seconds, your closing remarks.
Okay, 30 seconds. I think mine is simple. Our work is one of partnership, and institutionalizing of our reforms is key. It's an ongoing journey. I'd just like to thank the EC is probably representing all our MDAs and our partners here. We continue to work on the reforms. We continue to push hard. For instance, where we seem to be pushing for private sector, even when we're negotiating maybe provisions for the tax acts, for instance, but they continue to understand that the economy needs to thrive in order for them to deepen the tax net. I'd also like to thank Mrs. Omoni, because she's kind of standing in for all the state governments. Kwara State is the first state to execute the Executive Order 1 on transparency and efficiency of public service delivery. Kwara State is a leading state in ease of doing business and championing reforms. His Excellency has really been a champion for ease of doing business. I'd like to thank Deloitte, because Deloitte has partnered with us, really put their money where their mouth is. They had 2 embeds on the PEBEC team for 18 months, fully paid for by Deloitte, working with us technically on a lot of these reforms. And when private sector comes alongside a government, good things happen. And I'd like to thank you, Nancy, because the media has also been a strong part in the work that we do. You have always been very well prepared, and you've been a champion and supporter for the work that we do. So with all that said, to the participants, really strong attendance, almost 800 at a point. It's going to be a good year. If we all just put it together, it's just going to be a good year. So Fatai, thank you for the invitation, and have a good year, everybody.
Thank you very much, Dr. Oduwere. Thank you for that compliment. That's it. Mr. Nami, very quickly, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me start by appreciating my colleagues, the core panelists, and the big guys in the country, the Deloitte family, for giving us this opportunity. And I want to just round up by advising Nigerians to be patriotic, as they have always been. We are doing all we can to make sure that we request the government at the 3 tiers of labor and the 3 tiers to give taxpayers value for their money, because the issue of voluntary compliance can only happen if taxpayers can see what their tax payment is being applied for. And the advice I also want to give to our collecting agents, the taxpayers, is that indirect taxes that you collect on our behalf, you remit as at when due. And it is when you do that you do not have issues with compliance, sanctions, and all that stuff. And that is how we, as members of Joint Tax Board and at FIRS, were able to make a case for a reduction in the rate of direct taxes that we will be wanting to do, but for the failure of taxpayers remitting taxes as and when due, that they have acted as agent of collection, which they've deducted for payments they've made to people, or for transactions that they've had with customers as at when due. So we'll request that you do that for us in good time, so that we can also now be in a position to continue to advocate for application of these tax monies for the provision of social and critical infrastructure that you require as citizens of this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nabi. Ms. Somoni, yours in 30 seconds.
Okay, yes, thank you very much. The exception of His Excellency Governor Abdulrahman Abdulrazak, he gave us an order to ensure we don't raise taxes, but we work on improving the tax and widening the tax. And that's basically the focus or the base of the reforms that we've implemented in Kwara. And of course, I'm an active member of the Ease of Doing Business Council in the state. And thank you, Dr. Jumoke, for all the support that you have given us. We have done quite well and we will continue to do more. Our reforms are coming out, and we hope that this year will be a year of consolidation for the state. And I believe the same thing applies to all my other colleagues in all the other states. So I want to use this opportunity to thank the panelists. It's been quite enlightening. I want to thank Deloitte for inviting me for this seminar. I've also learned a lot. And I want to thank all the members, participants who have, yes, they were up to 800 at a time, and I was like quite impressed with what Deloitte has been able to put together on a virtual platform. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much, Madam. And it's my pleasure to say thank you very much. The panelists has been such a very good expose, not just this panel, but even from the beginning that I've sat down from 10 and listening to this, very, very educative. Dr. Jumoke Ozuwole, thank you very much. Mr. Anami, thank you very much. Mrs. Shadi Omoni, thank you very much. Yomi Odugbenro, thank you very much. Many things to take away from this panel. Tax education. Mr. Nami, you've got to intensify that so that you can widen in a more interesting way, because tax education is like boring. So we need to look for avenues to make it more interesting. And so many things has been said. Promoting businesses, we need to ensure that businesses must even be alive to pay taxes. And Madam Omoni talked about political support, value for money also from Mr. Nami. Then the Finance Act is also work in progress to reflect changes of the economy every year. So it's been an honor to moderate this. Thank you, Deloitte, for getting me on board. And I wish us also a very happy new year. Over to you, Uyi.
Thank you very much, Nancy, and a big thank you to our panelists. It's been a very insightful section from the very beginning. Thank you so much for your time. And also thank you to the participants who have been very patient from the very beginning. Please be rest assured that we're going to share the slides, the presentation slides, and we will attempt to provide answers to your questions. So we're holding all of the presenters, keynote speakers, to provide follow-up answers to some of the pertinent questions that you've asked. At this point, we are going for a wrap-up. So I'm going to invite the Chief Operating Officer of Deloitte West Africa, Mr. Anthony Olukoju, to give us a wrap-up. Tony?
Yeah, thank you very much, Uyi. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As they say, whatever has a beginning must have an end. So we have come to the end of this program, but before we draw the curtain, I would like to especially thank Their Excellency for honoring our invitation. We want to especially thank the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, for the representation he sent to us. We know that he would have loved to be part of this event, but because of his other commitments, that was why he could not attend. So thank you very much, His Excellency. Now to our chief host, the Executive Governor of Lagos State, Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu. Thank you for always responding to our requests whenever we call on you. We appreciate the Honorable Minister of Finance, Dr. Mrs. Zainab Ahmed. She had attended all the previous editions of NEO, and we want to especially thank her. And we want to also make a request in advance that the one for the year 2023 should be inserted in our calendar so that she will make it another home run for Deloitte. Now to our distinguished speakers and panelists, we do sincerely appreciate your time and the valuable insights. Very especially, we want to thank all the participants. Be rest assured that the conference materials will be
sent to you via your registered email addresses. We are confident that the 2023 edition will be physical, and we hope to see all of you in a room. So thank you very much for attending, and we hope you have a truly successful 2022. Thank you and good afternoon. Over to you, Uyi.
Thank you, Tony.
On the 23rd of April, 1845, William Welch Deloitte made the first entry into his time ledger. With a stroke of a pen, he set off a series of connections that has grown into a global organisation of over 330,000 of us. Today, more than 175 years later, we've chosen our Founders' Day as a day to consider what has made us, what continues to make us, thrive. After one of our most challenging years, and one of individual perseverance and collective success, we encourage you to take a moment to reflect on our enduring values together and look around at who we are, at what we aspire to be, as we take this moment to say thank you.
谢谢
Grazie.
Thank you.
Vielen Dank. Thank you, Deloitte.
For all that you've done this year, for our past, present, and future.